Just go on. Camera.
Okay. You're all attached already. Okay.
Yep. Sorry.
It's okay. Are we ready to roll, Rob? Okay, welcome everyone. See if I remember what month it is, to the March Speakers Bureau. I'll be sure glad next month when they're out, always the first day of the month. That always puts a lot of pressure under me to make sure everything is put together in time. Glad you are all here. It's so good to have you. We have one guest that has showed up, and that would be, I want to say hi to Emily, who showed up last night at the coaches meeting. So that's pretty special. Say wave at everybody or say hi, Emily. Glad you could make it. And we have a super guest too. I wasn't sure that she would be able to make it. I want to hear a little bit. We always call upon district leaders, and we have a district leader who I've not had a chance to see too much lately. And Melissa, do you have any special comments for the assembled multitudes here to share news from the district?
Hi, hey Tom. Just got my little one in my lap here, so you'll forgive me for having my video off, but really glad to see everybody. And we just have our area contest coming up for D&E this weekend. So that's the most recent exciting news coming in the district. And if you'd like to support the contest and help us have a fantastic contest, we are looking for a few more roles to be filled. So you can reach out to myself. I'll put my email in the chat, and then I'll connect you with our chief judge if you'd like to possibly like a judge or a counter. But that's going to be coming up this Saturday, 9 a.m. Starting time. And back to you, Tom.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. I'm sure glad you're here because we do have a person seeking their qualified speaker status, and you are a qualified speaker. So hopefully, I know you have a lot going on, especially with your new little one at home, but hopefully you'll be able to stay here and give us one more vote for the upcoming speaker. For those of you in the audience, the standard routine is I have to give you a little reward for taking the chance of getting out here in the weather. Now, I guess the weather improved a little bit. We actually had hail at our house this afternoon, but we said, what the hail? We're going to come anyway. Stupid. Anyway, hopefully you picked up, if you're a qualified speaker, you picked up a ballot, which looks like this, and you'll have that ready. Anyone can pick up evaluation forms, and those will be available for you to fill out, especially for our qualifying speaker, to be able to give to that person later on so she can read those over. And you should have also received some tickets, right? So we can make sure they got drawing, whatever they call it, door prize drawing tickets. Okay. And I want to tell you what those 5 are and the standard rules that I always follow. It's kind of like, a jungle rules. But anyway, after we read the numbers at the end of the meeting, that's why we get to keep you to stay here until the end. We'll call out the numbers, and whoever gets here first gets first choice. And the five choices are, the first one is Baseball Stars of the American League. There's a book there. There is the 7 Stages of Marriage. I don't know, some people only get through 2 or 3, but anyway. And some people just get the 3rd degree. Anyway, it's a sense of history, American heritage, and a tape audio disc of John Clancy. So if you don't have enough mystery this evening, you'll have a little more there. And finally, those of you who imbibe on traveling on travel cups, there's a official Toastmaster travel cup. So you have a chance to get that. With that, we are ready. We should have 3 speakers. I'm looking, I see Michael Alexander up here. I'm not sure if David Flores is here yet.
David is.
He is. Okay, that's great. I'm glad we have 2 of our qualified speakers speaking later in the evening, and we will do as we traditionally do. When someone is seeking their qualified status, we usually have them go first so they can relax the rest of the evening and then just kind of lose sleep. But I always let them know within 24 hours, swear it in blood. I've always done that, though I think there was one exception where there was a problem with connections. But Anyway, yes, I think I did show that, but you can make evaluations if you're in the audience. And we'll have you vote. Those of you who are qualified speakers, you'll be voting with Rob will collect those votes. And we will collect that, and I will have the announcement ready at tomorrow within 24 hours. And with that, I have to introduce one of our qualified speakers in the audience, who is, as is tradition, the coach mentor of our person seeking their qualified status, and Dominique Brookman.
Here, I can't be out front. Okay. Michelle Altizer loves serving the public. She has 25 years of municipal, county, and public school service in the Inland Empire. Michelle has degrees in psychology, business, and public administration. But she told me that the content for her workshops, programs, and speeches come only from living life, experiencing love, and surviving pain. In 2018, she began coaching women in reclaiming their confidence and personal power. She continues that work, but will soon be coaching relationship sensuality full-time with her husband, Roger. Michelle and Roger help clients claim their own endless honeymoons, taking a bite out of the divorce rates in this country, one couple at a time. I know each of you can learn something from tonight's presentation, whether you are single, married, widowed, divorced, or polyamorous. Please help me give a warm welcome to my friend, the smart and beautiful Michelle Altizer, with her qualified speaker presentation, 3 Ways to Prioritize Your Sexuality. It's Wednesday night. Frankly, I'm surprised to see any humans here with the snow, rain, slush, and ice. Few joining us on Zoom too. But when I thought about tonight, I was really thinking about the thousands of people still slogging their way home on their commutes after a long day of work, racing through a drive-through because you just picked the kids up from soccer practice, football practice, volleyball, put it in, violins, doesn't matter. Or maybe you're just racing to get to your latest Toastmasters club. We're busy. We're stressed. We're tired. Is it any wonder that our libido sometimes takes a back seat? Or hey, falls into an ice bath? It doesn't have to be that way. Tonight, I'm going to clue you in on 3 secrets. And you're going to leave with, I hope, a slightly different outlook on a healthy sex life. Even better, if you don't care about your sex life and don't want to, you can use the tools I'm going to talk about tonight in any relationship that's important to you, whether it's friends, family, or business. I do hope at least some of you will apply these techniques to an intimate relationship. Let's get started. The first secret, it's not really a secret. It's more like something that we should be doing that we forget to do. It's feeling good. And who doesn't want to feel good? Yes, I mean feel good in the bedroom. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. But it's also about feeling good, pleasure from other things in life. Because getting back to the bedroom, after that basketball, football, soccer practice, with the challenges of life, ebbs and flows in our health, our time, our stress. Sometimes it's just not going to happen. But if we let things ebb too low or let them stay there too long, it puts pressure on the relationship. One or the other feels neglected, unwanted, maybe even unattractive. It's funny when you try to address the feel good. Sounds like a chore. Something else I have to do. Oh my gosh, I get a check already, right? All right, guys, back it up. You know what your wife likes. Do it. Say it. How about he likes skin-on-skin contact? It's 35 degrees right now. I'm not walking around the house naked, sorry, but I will wear short pajamas and snuggle under a blanket on the couch while we watch TV. Compromise. I get my fuzzy slippers. He gets skin-on-skin contact. Win. What makes you feel good? And you? People there on Zoom? It changes when you think about a different relationship. I know, if you were going to do this at home, you could make a list. What are the things that make you feel good? Getting flowers? Seeing the dishes got done? How about foot massage when you come home after a long day of work? What about maybe trying something different? How about you get up first and make the coffee? I scared you there, didn't I? Your feel-good list is going to naturally curate itself based on who you think needs to know that information, whether or not you ever get to share it. Like, for example, I don't think I'm going to share that list that says I would feel great in the corner office and a $30,000 raise, boss. But I do hope you will share with your partner both the free, wildly expensive, and everything in between, things that he can do to make you feel good, feel noticed and appreciated. Brave. I don't want to skip this story because you need to hear it. Okay. I'll just have to come back to that later. Secret number 2 is being willing. Don't be afraid. Being willing does not mean saying yes to everything your partner wants. It doesn't mean saying yes to everything your friends or colleagues or community groups ask you to do. It means being willing to share your needs and desires, being willing to set boundaries, knowing what you need from a relationship so that you can approach a situation appropriately. The best way to do this is with questions. Questions like, what are we doing now that works? Is there anything we do that we don't want to do anymore? Or maybe we'd like to do less frequently. Is there anything new we'd like to explore? Do we want to keep it here in our imagination? Try something in real life. Again, you can apply this to an intimate relationship. But you can also apply this to setting goals at work. When you're looking at a position that opens, you know, does it pay enough? Are the benefits good enough? How long is that commute? What are the conditions that will let you pursue something or not? This one, my friends Steve and Rosie, perfect example. They come over for dinner a lot. So we're always trying to come up with new things to do for fun. So we asked them, why don't we go down to the theater down the street? And they started giggling. Turns out, early in their relationship, she bought season tickets for the symphony because he was always listening to classical music at home. They went show after show after show. Year after year after year. And then she started to notice that he was falling asleep before the first act was even over. I mean, really. Until one night, in the middle of a little show, so quiet a pin could drop, and the entire section turned around and glared at them. She dragged him out to the lobby. What gives? I thought you loved the symphony. I only went because I thought you loved the symphony, dear. Uh-oh. Share. Be willing to share what you like, what works, and what you maybe would like to end. They never went back again. And luckily, they can laugh about it now. Would have been a little easier, don't you think, if he told her he only liked his records at home? Better still, if she said, this is kind of a big expense. Would you like season tickets? And that leads me over to secret number 3. This one is going to be easy for you, Toastmasters, because it is sharing feedback. We believe in feedback. Give a speech. What did the speaker do well? What did I like? Where could they make improvements? Definitely to let them know you'd like to see it again. You might imagine some slight tweaks would be involved if applying this technique into an intimate situation. Sit down, honey. I'm ready to give you your evaluation. Give me the timer, 2 to 3 minutes. No. I think maybe for these, open-ended conversation might be a little bit better. Natural flow. That leaves me to Rob and Sue, one of the couples we know through our program. They like to apply the feel good by taking turns. You get to pick this month. I get to pick next month. That's how Roger and I trade between submarine movies and rom-coms. But for them, she picked a spa day. So they drove out to Palm Springs, a beautiful day spa, and she loved every minute of it. She loved that fluffy terry robe, the aroma therapy everywhere, the sound of water tinkling over rocks. She'd been very, very stressed at work. The kids were driving them crazy. So that masseuse melted the tension right off. He stretched, squeezed, thumped, and just ripped that tension right off of her. And by the end, she was wet pudding. Her husband didn't seem to have the same experience. She noticed he was really quiet when they were walking out to the car to leave. She could have ignored it, stuck her head in the sand and pretended she didn't notice he was upset. She could have gotten upset that he didn't enjoy it as much as she did. After all, that was a couple $100 to pay for that massage. But instead, she asked for his feedback. What's wrong, honey? Driving gives you a little bit of anonymity. Good conversations can occur while you're driving if they don't get out of control. He told her he felt weird seeing that man's hands all over her body, and he couldn't relax to enjoy his massage. He wasn't jealous exactly. He didn't really know what it was, but he didn't like it. So she said, maybe next time we could get female masseuses. And he said, okay, but I only want to go maybe once, twice a year at most. That's the kind of feedback we're talking about here. Can you see how you might apply the same technique to any relationship, but that you may have to adjust how much and how gentle the feedback is depending on who's in what source of power. I can't tell my boss that she's being a total idiot when she did that thing. No, I have to say, hey, I noticed that you're using this formula. I tried this the other day and it worked really good. Did you want me to put that in for you? Or you can use the sneaky thing of accidentally leave the information out and they find it and they comes up, it's their idea. I think women, we've been using that technique for centuries, right? 3 simple techniques. Feel good, be willing, share feedback. You can apply it to your intimate relationships. You can use it at work. You can use these techniques with your family. But if you leave with just one thing tonight, I hope you will prioritize feeling good, because that's the easiest one for everybody in the household to get on board with. And if you apply it to an intimate relationship, I hope you can see that the gesture doesn't need to start or relate in the slightest to anything that happens in the bedroom for it to pay dividends there. Use a culture of feeling good I'm prioritizing you feeling good. You're prioritizing me feeling good. Everybody's laughing. Everybody's happy. Everybody feels important, noticed, appreciated. It's harder to get bitter when things go wrong or get stressful. And it's easier to recover when normal little fights happen, because the happiest house doesn't mean you never fight. Hopefully it means you have lines in the sand you won't cross while you fight. The other day, Roger and I discovered a leak in our studio from this wonderful rain. And so he was out there in the back on a ladder, trying to clean out the rain gutter. We rent. We could have called, but if we did, they would have raised our rent, and we probably would have got kicked out of the house for a few days while they fixed it. I'm standing out there in my fuzzy robe because, hey, I'm from Southern California. I don't have a raincoat, and that has a hood. He's flicking the stuff, gravel, mud, leaves, muck, stink. It's landing all over me, all over him. Every couple times he moves the ladder over, I'm rubbing his back. I'm shaking his arms out, trying to rub his shoulders, because I'm sitting down there and I'm watching his face. And I'm seeing the pain and frustration build up. And so I'm just trying to lean it out. And when we're all done, I'm like, honey, you did a great job. And he's like practically on his knees and he says, honey, nobody would have done that for me. Nobody. That's what you need to do. Figure out what will make the people you love, that you care about, say, nobody would do that for me. Nobody. And then do them.
Evaluation.
Please fill out your evaluation, and QS qualified speakers, please cast your vote. And do what?
QS and she gives some comment.
And qualified speakers may give some comments. Would we like to start with Jeremiah? Do you have anything?
Sure. Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate you put together. Oh, no, you stay up there.
I do.
Yes. It's the hot seat that every QS gets to go through. You stand there still even further than life. I appreciate you sharing the story, and there was some parts I loved about your speech. I love the humor that you brought into the speech, and you could tell your entire mood changed whenever the audience got involved. There was a spot to where you kind of everybody started laughing, and I could feel you almost open up a little bit. But unfortunately, I think Zoom actually hindered you. You have a huge personality in a very good way. And your personality is very connective and just really, and I felt like you were very confined. Especially from the time you started your introduction of your speech, and then you started in the same spot where you also gave your first point, and your second point, and your third point. But you had a part where you were like, you were talking about driving, you go like this, except for not running into something. And then he said, now, but we're going to back it on up. You kind of got involved and you moved into it. I would have loved to have seen you move a little bit. So whenever you did your opening, maybe come over here to the not so dreaded dark spot of the room. But, but maybe kind of slide over just a little bit and then go to the far side and then end up back there. But it takes us along your speech to those 3 different points. Excellent points. I really love those. There was a spot where you forgot your part and everything. That's going to be something that it's going to come with time as you're doing these. These speeches are always a little bit more difficult because you're trying to put 20 minutes and trying to remember all those things. Just the nice part about it is sometimes there's so much information. I wouldn't really get too tied up, and if you forgot it, and don't announce it because we don't know that you forgot it. You can just keep on flowing right into it. get right to your next portion. And then the last thing that I wanted to bring up, because I have some other notes here, but this will all go to you as well, is you gave us our one, I love it with 3. You had the rule of 3, which was great, excellent points. Then you gave us, if you walk away with one thing, this, and then you told us a story. And I would have loved to see you tell us the story, then give us the one thing I want you to walk away with is you need to make sure that they feel good. That day, I made sure Roger felt good. You need to make sure you and your loved one feel good. And then call it. And so that way, I felt like you kind of gave us that double there. But besides that, fantastic job. You have such great points. And I look forward to hearing you do this more and definitely grow in the program. So great job today.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Do we have anything from the front?
We do have one from the front. While I was juggling what I was writing and watching the time, Michelle, as Roger, well, he would say this, but Jeremiah said too, you have a big presence. And I felt that, I don't know whether it was that they were a little stifled. I would have liked to have seen a little more movement, not a lot, but just kind of gave a few steps to the right, a few steps to the left. You have a conversational tone. I would have liked maybe a little more pausing and motion, a few more ups and downs, but I think you had universal points that were applicable, as you said. So you presented what you said you were going to, that everybody can use it. You gave us good examples, personal examples, and I would have liked a little stronger close and maybe even a step forward and make them feel. And then just a little more emphasis on your clothes because it was beautiful. Thank you, Michelle.
Did you have anything? We have Michael? Michael Ozier, do you have anything?
Oh, Michelle, I had no idea where you're going to go with the topic. But you certainly, Tom hooked us with your title, and how could I not come? So I think that's a great start. And I love that you kept it down to the 3 core aspects. I was at a talk the other night and someone had 12 points. I stopped listening. I couldn't wait for each one for you to come up with the next. And I also like, you told stories. I want them all to be personal stories, but you told good personal stories. But you owe us a story that you said you were going to tell us. And I don't know if you told it, but we want to hear it. So I think that's really what I'm talking about. And it's hard in that environment and Zoom together on the hybrid. So I have no comments on your presentation, except I love your smile. You know that. But what's the story you didn't tell us?
Yeah. This one is my bestie friends, Jack and Kim. Their marriage was in deep trouble. And I'm really good friends with both of them, one from work and one through other places I won't talk about. So anyway, their marriage was really in trouble. And Jack was telling me that he thought that Kim was having an affair, or that she didn't want him anymore because she was withholding sex from him. Well, from Kimberly's point of view, she wasn't withholding sex. She was just purely exhausted. And she was exhausted because they had little kids in the house, piles of laundry. She could not keep up with the housework. And on top of that, she felt herself unattractive and almost dirty when her house was messy. So when the two of them finally got together to talk, with me being the mediator, they were able to come to an understanding that she was not withholding sex and still found him attractive, but she couldn't think about sex with the challenges she had. He bought housekeeper for her to come a couple times a week and do some of the chores that she felt good enough to have her do. And then he picked up some more. That made it to where she could keep up with the chores that she herself needed to do. and still keep up with the kids. Many years later, they are still together. And so I hear things are banging.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Dominique.
Thank you, Michael. Connie, did you have anything? Tom? Zoom people first. Okay, Zoom people first. Do we have any other Zoom people who would like to make comments? Just unmute and show yourself on camera. And Melissa? Judy? Ross?
Hey, I'll say something.
Okay.
I'll make it quick so little one doesn't distract us here. But Michelle, I loved your speech topic. I thought, like Michael said, it was provoking, got us interested, but it was extremely relatable in multiple aspects. And I love how you made that very clear in your speech as well, so that we could stay engaged no matter what level we were at as far as how it relates to your topic. I really enjoyed the simplicity of the structure. That made it easy to follow. Totally agree with Michael on that one. The cadence was a little slow at the beginning, but you eased into it very quickly. I was wondering how soon it would pick up, and it picked up pretty quick. And then you were into it and you started doing more gestures, and your pacing picked up and got really comfortable. And that's when it became even more exciting to hear the stories and the content. And I thought it was a fantastic speech. I wish I could be there in person because you come alive when you tell your speeches and your stories. And I thought you did a fantastic job.
Thank you, Melissa. How about Charles? Charles Randy, are you available for any feedback, sir? Or Judy? Okay, hi, Judy.
Yes, Judy.
Yes, Judy.
Me, okay, now can you hear me? Okay, yes. Yeah, Michelle, it was a great speech. And your vocal variety picked up quite a bit. And your theme is thought-provoking and interesting. And, who doesn't like, have some sex to spice up their life? And the only thing I would comment is that if you were going to do this speech again, it would be add a little bit more vocal variety. It's just there were times when you could add more passion to it. I know you're very good at it. And I love it, this version of it from the previous time I heard it, and I think you can even enhance it more. Back to you, Toastmaster.
Thank you, Judy. Anyone else like to unmute and put themselves on camera and have a few words? Roz? Michael?
Yes. Hi, Michelle. From what I heard from here sounded great. Your stories were very interesting, and I like the dynamics of how you switched to make it appropriate to home, work, maybe even a Toastmasters group. I thought your pace was a bit slower than I was accustomed to hearing you speak. So the first thing I thought is did she forget what she wanted to say? Or maybe you have some markers on the floor that you were looking for. It was just slower than I'm accustomed to hearing with you speaking. And I thought, if this Speakers Bureau platform is to help you get to a different audience, non-Toastmasters, because I remember when, I was asked to speak at, other groups because I'm a QS. I'm not sure that you would use that pace for different audiences. You might want to tighten up the story too, so that it fits the audience, whether it's the old men's club or the Rotary or the the Young Women's Club. You have to look at your audience and how you pace it, how you prepare it to be received by your audience. But you had good stage presence and I could hear you very clearly. So you don't have any problem with vocal variety and all of the little nuances that we learn in Toastmasters. Thank you for giving a great speech.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you, Dr. Michael?
First of all, I love the fact that your stories went in both directions. So you'd start a story and then you'd pull us back so that it stayed dynamic as you told the stories. I thought that was wonderful. I really did. And you had a lot of very good and interesting stories to talk about, which also helps fill things in well. I'm going to agree with everybody else about the pace. I felt it was a little slow. And in fact, there were parts where I said to myself, is this really a 15-minute speech? Is it a 7-minute speech that she's dragging out? But the other thing I want to warn you about is you didn't deliver on the topic that your title suggested. And I came in sort of expecting a certain spiciness. And now I'm not saying, because I don't believe that relationships are about sex, but that's what I came in expecting you to talk about. And so I felt heated by the title. Now I'm going to go ahead and ask this question. Did you write the title or did someone else write it for you?
I wrote the title and then I was asked to very much rated G the speech.
Okay. And I think if you change the tenor of the speech, you need to change the title as well. Because if you talked about, if you'd come to us and said, I'm going to talk to you about relationships and improving them and getting on with people and all of those things, you could have said how to improve your relationships. And I would have come in that mode. And I wouldn't have felt cheated by what you offered. But when you talked about spicing up your sex life, or exactly what the title was, that's what I was expecting. And I had to waste time adjusting. Good stuff to work from, though. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that wonderful feedback, Michael. We'll keep that in mind. It's one of those things where appealing to a broad audience is always tough on a provocative topic, but thank you for reminding us.
Is
there anyone else who would like to give some feedback? Any other qualified speakers on Zoom? Going once? Charles, one last shot. Okay. Hearing none, do we have other, Connie, do you have anything? You don't have to. Oh. Pam, you have?
Yes, I heard this speech once before, and I didn't see relating to what Dr. Michael just commented, that you are probably using the speech for different groups, and therefore the topic or the way certain subjects are approached can vary if you're doing it here before a Toastmasters group or a group who are of couples who are actually in your group that you are guiding through to improve their relationships. When I heard you speak before, I know you had a little, like, I think you called it homework, and you didn't really have that so much tonight. And that would be where, like at the end, you were pointing out making your partner feel good about himself or herself. And I forget what those were, but I appreciated those, and as has been stated, like the idea of making sure that it would be something that could be used not just for couples, but in other parts of your life as well. And I guess also, I think Suzanne or somebody said something about tightening up the ending, making the ending a little more dynamic. So I'm kind of echoing what I've heard from other QSs. Thank you for that.
Well, I'm gonna relate back to something that Jeremiah said at the very beginning, and that was slowness in the beginning a little bit. And I think, and also related to the lighting. I'm gonna take the blame for the light because I kind of told her she could stay over here because she's worried about getting in the dark. So I'll take the blame for the limited side. It's a little, sometimes you had people criticize for being in the dark. As far as the slowness, I noticed there was a little bit of slowness in the beginning, but once you hit, and I remember specifically the symphony story, once you did that, but from then on, you were animated, you had all kinds of other things that came through. So I think that weight came off your shoulder a little bit, and it is tough to be in here in this room seeking to become qualified and all that stress that goes involved with that. So I can see that it really rolled into that. A couple of things in terms of content. When I was a high school counselor, I went all that training and everything. And whenever I hear, especially a female telling me about relationships, I'm looking for the imbalance in the suggestions, mostly about criticizing men doing more, women doing whatever. And you were balanced, and so I really applaud you for that. You gave advice that helped in all ways, and you related to the sex involved in other relationships. I think that was important too. When I make a judgment on sending someone out to be a qualified speaker, this is a speech that I can send out to the Kiwanis Club and the Rotary Club and that sort of thing. And yeah, the title might be a little bit too titillating, whatever, we might think about changing something slightly in that, but I think the content was appropriate to anybody. And I think the lessons out there are good for anybody. So I really would work to have you tell the symphony story to open, because you're kind of suggesting what the situation is, the lack of communication. And then you get into the whole story about how to enhance your position. So that's just a thought. Anyway, I thought it was great. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say one thing, and it's not so much to your speech. I just want to say, first of all, I want to thank you. I don't want to take you in front of everybody. I actually got a text message from you for actually coming today. And I don't know if you text all the QSs, but I got one person, and I want to thank you for that. But I also want to say that I would love to see, especially our QSs, show up whenever people give their qualified speeches. I know we have one coming up next month, and if we have a QS that can make it here, they should be here. It is extremely hard to do a live speech to a Zoom audience and a live audience. And it's hard because a lot of times we feed off of that audience. And so I wanted to say that since before we moved off to all these other things, that if we're QS, one of the things that we should be doing is coming down here and making the drive. And I would be willing, I would go, if anybody's ever invited me to something, I go to it as long as I'm available, and they should be willing to come down here and try to give that support to those people. And so I just want to thank you for that text, but I would love to see more QSs get here and commit to this program. This program is a very in-depth process, and you've spent months working on this, as we all have. I mean, I spent 2 to 3 months working on mine, and I would love to see all of our QSs give that same commitment to the people and show up here to be able to give them proper feedback, because I think sometimes that doesn't allow the person to be able to connect. Because it's hard to connect whenever I can count the number of people here on the panel. So I wanted to say that. So.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
If you haven't cast your vote yet, please do. And thank you, Tom.
Yes, thank you. And speaking of the word thank you, I can remember something I didn't do at the beginning, and that is to thank all the other participants. By the way, do I have a particular reason between our next 2 speakers are Michael Alexander and David Flores? Did you guys arm wrestle to determine who should go next? Because I never made a determination. Was it important for one of you to go next?
I'm afraid of David's big arms, so arm wrestling him is It's a scary thought to me.
Which way is it going? Is David gonna go next then, or?
You don't have a preference, David? You also don't have a voice right now. At least I can't hear you.
Does it make any difference to one of you, which one, either of you to go first or next?
No
Okay.
difference to me.
All right. We'll go with the old standard of alphabetical, so Michael can go next, but I did want to make sure I don't forget to thank so many of our participants that allowed us to have it, but I did want to go back onto what Jeremiah just said. It was very important that our QSs, we're still operating under the typical Toastmaster design, which I'm not real excited about, and that is that we would even allow someone to go for their qualified speaker on Zoom. I don't recommend it. I think it'd be actually difficult to do that. We found that in the past, but it is important for our qualified speaker to be here. And I'm so glad that many of those that did make it as possible are here, even if they're here on Zoom. And maybe the weather will get a little better. There'll be less reasons to not be able to do that. But I want to thank our technology person who helps to make this all possible, Rob Gunnerman, who's there in the back, making sure that we are on screens. Thank Sharon Kenty for putting the publicity out, and you see that gets into the flyers. Thank the VA hospital for allowing us to be here, and Sandy Emilino who arranged for that to happen. So thank them. Thank our timers here, the Connie and okay. All right. Let's see. Next. Oh, a couple of announcements. I think we mentioned it last month that we did lose another qualified speaker. Mary Hamlin moved to New Jersey, but her close friend, Michael Owen, died. So, and that was within the last month or so. I'm not sure whether the announcement got out last time or not. And that one of our participants, Dr. Diane Piella, had to have her shoulder rebuilt, and she won't be able to participate for a while, she said. In fact, I think it was maybe yesterday she was in for surgery, so she's probably still in a daze. Many of us are anyway, but she's in a bigger daze because of her surgery. So have your thoughts and prayers go with our members that are suffering a bit. Okay. We do have speakers next month. We have speakers speaking their qualification speaker, and we have assignments for the next 2 months of people that have said that they have. We're not 100% sure yet with all the details haven't been checked off, but we do have that in expectation. And we are busy sending speakers out to you. I will be looking for some speakers. I have speakers I need to assign in April. One on the 23rd and one next Tuesday is still yet to be filled. So that was an assignment that came along late. Okay, now let's get out to our next speaker. And this I am looking forward to because I don't think I've heard the content of the speech, and this is a topic I really am interested in, especially because both of these two gentlemen are members of my debate club. So if you want to hear them speak in debate and maybe totally talking out of tonight's they're going to know what they're talking about. But when they're in the debate, they may not know what they're talking about because they won't find out till they walk in the door, whether they're one side or the other. By the way, next month, in case you're interested, contact me. The debate topic is, if I remember it precisely, artificial intelligence. Will that be a benefit or a detriment to society? So a good topic there. And by the way, what's really interesting is I had Michael Alexander tell artificial intelligence to write the debate topic. So the debate topic is word for word what was produced by artificial intelligence. And we'll probably bring a little artificial intelligence with us when we walk in the door. So, okay, enough of my ballying back and forth. Okay. Our next speaker, Michael Alexander, qualified speaker in 2 districts, District 100 and District 12. Actions have consequences, but these consequences are not often the ones that we thought they would have. Sometimes they make things better than expected, sometimes worse, and sometimes they may affect something which seems completely unrelated. As a result, one can solve a problem, but create new and worse problems. Our next speaker will be Dr. Michael Alexander, manager, problem solver, and policymaker. And over the course of his career, he observed a number of well-intentioned solutions that nevertheless did not work out as expected. And some of these unexpected consequences are still out there waiting to happen, unless we do something to nip them in the bud. In his presentation, he will share some of these and some other observations on what can be done to keep the best of intention from going awry. Michael Alexander, unintended consequences. Welcome to the land of unintended consequences. Michael Alexander.
On the first day of my first class in economics, the professor told a story. And he said, if you want to be an economist, you have to understand this story. And he began by sending only men to the Virginia colonies. The chances of success of the colonies were improved. Immediately, you could feel tension in the room as people were upset at this obviously chauvinistic statement. But he'd said I had to understand it if I wanted to be an economist, and I wanted to be. So I figured it couldn't hurt to listen. And so he proceeded by sending only men to the Virginia colonies. England was left with a large number of old maids. Now in England, old maids keep cats. Cats kill rats. Rats, which had they lived, would have brought down the bee population in England. Bees, which because they did live, were able to cross-pollinate the clover and grass eaten by the cows of England. Cows who provided the beef, which was shipped to the American colony. Healthier cows, healthier beef, healthier men, a better chance of survival of the Virginia colonies. Now, those people who'd stopped listening and as soon as they heard the chauvinistic statement missed the point. And the real point of that story is that you have to keep listening and you have to keep thinking. People who stop at their conclusion, this is chauvinistic, I don't want to hear it, miss the important reality of going from men to old maids, to cats, to rats, to better cows, to better survival. We live in a society where we think very quickly, what is the solution? What is the consequences? And as a result, we make a number of serious mistakes. Well, sometimes things work out well, but let me give you a very recent example from me. My wife wanted to take out the old trees lining our backyard and put up fruit trees because she wanted the beauty of fruit trees. And so we took the trees down. Wonderful. We put up fruit trees. Very nice. And then everybody was happy until my neighbor's air conditioner started running. And lacking the sound buffering of those trees that had been, my wife was kept awake all night because she didn't think through the question of what the trees actually did. And that's the kind of problem we face all too often. Now, another example of an unexpected consequence on a subject people hadn't even thought about, and this one positive, was when Alexander Fleming was working on a small biology experiment. Alexander Fleming was the discoverer of penicillin. And because there was a small mistake and the dish was not cleaned properly, a little piece of mold got into it. And it killed off all of the bacteria which Fleming was trying to study. The result? Penicillin. No one expected penicillin. No one had ever thought of it. But it happened. Now, years later, Alexander Fleming was shown a beautiful modern facility. Wonderful. Everything was clean, sterile, scientifically controlled. And the man who ran that lab said to him, "Imagine what you could have discovered in this laboratory." To which Alexander Fleming replied, "Certainly not penicillin." Other examples of stories actually wind up being quite different, but on the same subject as people intended. In New Zealand, they were very concerned by the fact that men had an easier time getting employed than females. And so they said, how do we handle this? Well, let us remove by law all references on the resumes and applications which tell people what the sex of the applicant is. Anyone want to guess what happened? The exact opposite of what was intended. Because there are reasons why the resumes may explain differences. Why did a woman take a softer track? Why did the employee take time off? Because it was a woman taking care of her children. It wasn't because she couldn't be employed. It wasn't because she wasn't taking work seriously. But if you don't know that, all you know is these two employees, one seems to take work seriously, one seems to take a lot of time off. And as a result, the one who worked more seriously, who is the male, gets hired because we don't understand why. You ever wonder what happens when we make cars more energy efficient? There's a reason why we want cars more energy efficient. Very simple one. We want to decrease pollution. And so we make cars more gas efficient. You know what happens when cars are more gas efficient? I'll give you a hint. It's cheaper to drive them. And as a result, people say, hey, I can drive more miles for the same price. So they do. And all the advantages you got from the energy efficiency disappear. In fact, the reverse happens. As people get longer distances driven, they can afford a second car, or maybe even a third car for their children. And so instead of getting less pollution, which is what we intended, we get more. There was an idea. Well, we've all heard about greenhouse gases. Anybody here who's never heard of the greenhouse gas effect? Raise your hand. And 2 of you. Okay. I'd like to ask those of you who have to explain to me the chemistry which causes carbon dioxide to reflect more heat into the atmosphere, because that's the theory, that like a greenhouse, the heat enters, bounces off the earth, hits the cloud layer, or the ozone layer, and then bounces back, which means that the Earth is hotter. This is what we all know, right? We've all thought it through. We know this makes sense. Any of you know why carbon emissions would create a bigger greenhouse gas bounce? No. No scientist has ever told you that. You probably only know it's true because you went to watch a movie by a former vice president and assumed that an Academy Award, which is given for entertainment value, meant that it had more scientific value. Think about that question. Entertainment value is mistaken for scientific value. That, my friends, is an unintended consequence of an Academy Award. Now, I'm not going to talk about the greenhouse bounce per se, but I want you to think whenever you're told something or everyone knows it, but maybe they don't. You know what the advantage of the scientific journals are? The refereed scientific journals? They mean that the referees get to put their opinions in and call them scientific. And those people who aren't popular enough to be referees don't get to. Which means that the intention of making things more scientific may in fact limit what science brings you. But enough of a diatribe on scientific unintended consequences. Let us talk instead about the idea that we will reduce carbon emissions. I work in the energy industry, so forgive me if I wax a little long on this subject. I worked in the electric industry when they decided we should use natural gas to generate electricity because it had less carbon emissions. And it does. And that's where we stopped. Carbon is bad. Reduce carbon emissions. Things are good. Did we think it through? No. Because gas has methane emissions, and methane is a worse greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. And that's why some of you have heard this threat that the Democrats want to take your gas stoves away from, because we're realizing that natural gas may be a worse problem than the one it solved. Or, as Michael Cervantes says in Don Quixote, may the cure not be worse than the disease. Well, we're getting rid of gas now. This has got to be a better thing, right? Solar. No emissions from solar. Absolutely none. Are you thinking through the whole process when you say that? Well, let me tell you two unintended consequences. First of all, solar energy uses a large number of heavy metals which leach into the water. An unintended consequence. Water pollution, a dangerous one. We're not worried about it now, but we will someday. But at least it doesn't have any gas emission. Until we put solar or even wind out in the desert where it's far away from people, because that's a good spot for it. And then we put power lines across the forest. What happens when there are forest fires because of electric power lines? All those forest fires in California, they're an unintended consequence of safe, clean wind and solar. And they pour more carbon into the atmosphere than the coal and natural gas that they replaced. By the way, while I'm on the subject of trees, we wanted, roughly 100 years ago, to decrease the runoff from trees, from the rain, the erosion that happened on the mountainside. And so we planted fast-growing eucalyptus all up and down the mountain. And we stopped the erosion. We did exactly what we had in mind. It didn't occur to anybody to ask what happened 100 years later to a eucalyptus tree. Because the answer is they build up creosote. And after 100 years, the creosote becomes highly flammable. And you get forest fire. Again, we didn't think through the whole consequence. And that, my friends, is what I want you to start doing. Listening to what you're told, but then thinking, what aren't you being told? What aren't you thinking about? No one's hiding these things from you. They simply aren't thinking things through themselves. In politics, well, I hear some wonderful stories from people who trust the media. They aren't always right. I heard a story about, well, in this case, the president, the former president, who asked a whole series of well-dressed men and women to bring coffee in for the conference. The media was outraged when they discovered that these men and women were not waiters and waitresses. They were, in fact, members of the staffs of many of the senators and congressmen in that meeting. Now, nobody told the president that the staffers were going to be there. He didn't know. He made an assumption based on the way they were dressed. And a great media uproar over the way he treated it. His quick decision had an unintended consequence. The failure to inform him had an unintended consequence. And it looked like he was mistreating staffers, which is what the news reported, when in fact, he simply made an unfortunate mistake. Now, I've looked at a lot of papers and a lot of headlines online where people stop reading after the first line. And if you read the story, it's not at all what's reported. In fact, it's frighteningly wrong. YouTube shows a lot of person A is schooled by a student or an interviewee. Watch the actual interview, they're not. But people believe it. And that's serious problem. They believe they believe the story. I'll give you an apocryphal one. There was a new lion brought into the zoo, imported from Africa. The people were very delightfully pleased and all went down to see the lion. In fact, one child got too close. And as a result, the lion reached out and grabbed him and pulled him in. The lion would have eaten the child except for a large burly biker who punched out the lion and rescued the child. The newspaper asked him for a human interest story about himself. He said, well, I run the Toys for Tots organization. I am very heavy in the Easter sales rallies to raise money for children. And well, I'm a Republican. I am active in my church. The story read in the newspapers, Republican punches out new immigrant to the country and steals his lunch. That kind of reporting can occur. Read the story. Now, when I wanted to talk about problems for this very group, problems with understanding what was going on with emissions, with understanding the unintended consequences there, one of the people in the audience decided it was a good time to rap lackadaisical on the question of greenhouse gases, completely missing my point that we are getting wrong what's actually going on. Someone decided not to listen, but to throw statistics in our face. And as a result, I don't think that person learned that we have to be careful about what we think is happening. You need, each and every one of you, as citizens of this country and as citizens of the world, not to leap to quick conclusions, not to throw out a decision that says, hey, that's a chauvinistic statement about the Virginia colonies, but to figure out what the lesson is there and to learn from them. So I ask each and every one of you, as you go through life, ask yourself, not just what's the story, but what am I missing from the story? What's going to happen because I don't think things all the way through? And how do I avoid a knee-jerk reaction which says, these are the statistics I have, and I'm going to throw them in whether they're relevant to the story or not. This is the chauvinistic statement that the professor has made, and I don't really need to hear the point or why he thought it was important. And you see, once again, our young friend is decided to discuss carbon dioxide instead of listening because she's not thinking things. I want you to think things through. I don't want you to make those kinds of mistakes. I don't want you to knee-jerk, and I don't want you to believe you have solutions just because you have something to say. Think about what can go right, what can go wrong, and how we prevent those wrong from happening. Mr. Toastmaster.
Brought there in the 20s for a movie and somehow never got on the screen. That part was cut out of the movie, but they left them there. And they do what buffalo do, and they reproduced and reproduced, and pretty soon they got up to about 500, which was decimating the island, and there was all kinds of problems. And so they had to figure out, bring somebody in there to make sure that all the female bison were not reproducing and having babies. And so then it got way down, and then they said, well, if we eliminate them, all of a sudden the grass will grow and the fires will be terrible, and we'll lose all this tourists because there were thousands of dollars worth of tourist money to come. And so then they had to let them produce again. So those unintended consequences of if the buffaloes were never there, and yet they still had to be there. So, okay, we are going on to another qualified speaker who is qualified both in District 100 and District 12. and follow that up with being the district governor of District 100. So he's a past district governor from District 100. And he is always interesting. I've heard him speak on numerous occasions besides becoming a qualified speaker. And so let me start with his introduction. Many people join Toastmasters and then after a few years drop out. Oh, that's terrible. That's heresy. Perhaps at that moment they wonder if they will ever use those skills outside of Toastmasters. Tonight's speaker will share a true story on why you should never quit practicing the art of public speaking. David Flores, past District 100 District Director, Toastmasters International, District 12, and District 100 qualified speaker. 39-year Toastmaster, title of his speech, Caught in a Pickle. Caught in a Pickle, David Flores, prepared for him.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I'm assuming everybody can hear me. I've had some issues with the internet here. The wind is blowing very hard, so it's kind of causing me to say it. I'm getting some fluctuations. But yes, for those of you maybe recently have noticed that there's a new game in town. It's called pickleball. It's kind of a mixture between tennis and ping pong. It's bigger than a ping pong table, but smaller than a tennis court. But it looks pretty much the same as both those sports. Well, I want to share with you a story about the original pickleball, the one that I played as a young kid growing up in our neighborhood. See, when we played pickleball, it was basically a simple game that we could play in our neighborhood because it didn't require but 3 people and a baseball. That's all you needed. And the object of the game was real simple. You had one person that was a base runner, and the other 2 people were the people who were going to try to tag you out. We needed bases, but the bases were simple. We usually got a cardboard box, cut up a square, place it down one end of the yard, somebody's house, and at the other end of the yard of someone's house, and those were our bases. And we could play this game forever. The object was simple. The runner had to get from one base to the other without being tagged. And each base that you went from to the opposite side, you gained a point. And this game will go on until you were eventually tagged out. So then you just switch players and the other player would go in the middle and the other 2 players would be on the other side, both ends. And we played this game for hours and hours and hours because it only required the 3 of us and a baseball. We could do it. So we did that probably every day along with other games. We're pretty much what we call the sandlot games of the neighborhood, playing this game. And the only time we ever quit the game usually is because someone's father would come home from work and they say that we put a path in his yard and he'd kick us out. Or things got dark and couldn't see anymore. Or either that or someone's mother yelled, it's time to come home for dinner. So we had to quit the game. But we played that game for years. And I remember often how much we did it. Unfortunately, when I was growing up, I never got the opportunity, along with my friends in my neighborhood, to play organized ball. We weren't in Little League, didn't have Pop Warner. Our parents just couldn't afford to pay for those kind of sports as an extracurricular for us growing up. So we just intended to play it among ourselves, our own games that we would play. And pickleball was one of our favorites because it was easy to do and only required 3 of us to be able to play. Well, then finally, when I made it into junior high school with my first opportunity to actually play an organized sport and play against people we didn't know, not among ourselves. So I remember that when we got into the 9th grade, we were in our district championship game. Our coach at the time was a fairly successful baseball player at Chapman College here in Orange County. He got drafted to the minor leagues, didn't quite make it, but in the meantime, he was smart enough to get a teacher's credentials, and he ended up being our coach our 9th grade year, junior high school. So let me tell you what happened. Having played among ourselves as kids, we never had any really idea how the game was played. We just kind of played wherever we wanted to. But with Coach Vanneman, he had all kinds of different plays that we would work on, different strategies we'd play in baseball, and all kinds of things that I was never familiar with. My other friends that have played ball that were in that school were in Little League. They knew what was going on. I didn't, along with a couple of my other friends that were in the same situation. So I had to pay really close attention to what was going on how these games were played and the different strategies involved in baseball. Sorry for the dogs. But what happened was what really tells me the story that I want to share with you. There was a play they call a squeeze play. And for those who are not familiar with baseball, I'll try to explain as best I can how that's played out. The squeeze play starts out with if you have a person on third base. What you want to try to do in the squeeze play is you're going to try to steal home, but the difference is that the batter who's at home has to get his bat and square it up and just let the ball hit the bat so that it bounces into the fair zone. But the thing is, you can't give the play away before you start. So what happens, you have to wait until the pitcher who's ready to pitch is committed to throw the ball home. So the way the story goes, I'm on third base. We're at the bottom of the ninth inning. I represent the winning run because we were tied at 1-1. For me to get home means the game is over and we've won the championship. I'm standing there. The coach puts on the sign. The squeeze play is on. Now, we've practiced this many times during the week and throughout the season. And the caveat in the whole play was that you cannot give it away before the pitcher committed to throwing the ball home. And the batter could not square up until the pitcher had committed that. And one of the things the coach always emphasized is you've got to bunt the ball on the ground. The worst thing can happen if you were to pop the ball up, because then the runner will get caught. And all they had to do was catch the ball and throw it back to the third baseman. And it's just a force out where they don't even have to tag you. They just have to get the ball to the base before you get back. So the likelihood of making it back if the ball gets put up in the air are very slim. So we're ready to go. Play is on. I'm on third base and I'm sneaking off, taking a lead, trying to get away. And the whole time I'm watching that pitcher, eye contact with him, his every movement, making sure he's not going to try to pick me off. Because if he throws to third base and I'm not there, they can just tag me out and I'm out. And the play is dead. So I'm sitting there staring at the pitcher. And the pitcher, same way. He's got his mitt and his ball, and he's staring at me. Because he's thinking, if I get too far off that base, he's going to pick me off. So I'm carefully watching him, and he's watching me. We're in a staring contest, looking to see who's going to blink first. And sure enough, just as I see him move that foot and commit that he's going to throw the ball home, I take off. There I go. Running as fast as I can, just seeing how this plane is going to work. Remembering that just in practices, I'll see the ball as it comes to the bat, and the bat will bounce off, ball will bounce off the bat, and I'll go sliding into home. Safe. We win the game, and it's working the way it is. I'm coming as fast as I can, running as fast as I can, and all of a sudden, no, he didn't pop the ball up in the air. He missed the ball entirely. Well, I didn't remember practicing that part of the game where we do if the ball gets missed. So all of a sudden, all I see is the catcher with the ball in his hand and his glove, getting ready to tag me out. So I immediately slam on the brakes. I dig my cleats into the dirt, come into a complete stop as fast as I can, and try to get back towards third. Now I'm in a pickle. I'm between third base and home plate, and they're going to try to tag me out. It's a bit of a cat and mouse game. I got cats on both sides of me, and I'm the mouse in the middle. And there I go, back and forth, back and forth. Seemed like an eternity. And the only thing in my mind that I remember vividly at that time was when Mark missed that ball, was my coach yelling out an expletive that I won't repeat here. The other coach on their team just going, yeah, we've got this. So back and forth I go, thinking, I got to get out of this. This is going to be terrible. If we don't score, we go into extra innings, and who knows what the outcome might be. Or we could have ended the game if we had pulled that play off, but it didn't work as planned. Finally, thinking of all the years I played that silly game of pickle, never in my mind ever imagining it would ever come to something that would be important. But now I found myself in a position where it really meant something. And this was an important thing to happen. I look back at all those hours, hundreds upon hundreds of hours playing that game back and forth among ourselves. And here I was in the same situation where it really meant something. As we went back and forth, I finally thought, what I used to do when we played the game is I would fake like I'm going to run back to one base, stop, and then immediately go back towards as I saw the ball being thrown. So in my mind, I decided that's what I'm going to do. So as the person at home plate started running at me with the ball in their hand, I said, okay, I'm turning. I'm going to run like I'm going back to third base as hard as I can, and then wait to see the signal where the other player on the other side who's going to receive the ball to try to tag me out puts his hand up. And that was my clue. I stopped like fast as I could. I could see the other player waiting for the ball to be thrown back to him. And just as he was reaching up, I was diving down. Boom. Scored. Game over. We won the championship. I've never been more thankful for all the times I spent playing that silly game where it finally actually paid off on something big. So you ask yourself, why is that anyway in relationship to what we do in Toastmasters? Well, as I mentioned before, we've seen people join the organization and eventually leave for whatever reasons. But oftentimes I think it's because they don't see a return on their investment, the time they just spent working on that, developing those speaking skills. They've gotten confident. They feel comfortable with what they're doing. They know they've gotten better, but they just don't see themselves actually putting it into action for any real reason. But you have to think about this. Every professional player continues to practice on a day-to-day basis, whether you're in sports, in music, acting, anything that you do professionally, you've always wanted to professionally practice on a regular basis to keep that skill at its highest potential all the time. Because you never know. I'd like you to say something. Do you want to be the person who gave up too soon and realize that what you don't use, you lose? You can get rusty and not be able to perform at your highest level, at peak performance. That's not the situation you want to be in. That's why I've always said, this skill, this art, public speaking and communication is something that you have to practice on a regular basis and never quit. Because when the day comes that you're put on the spot and it's your turn to perform, you'll either be ready or you'll be rusty. And being rusty may not get the results you want. So that's why, after 39 years, I've never left the organization and never plan to, because I want to be ready. If I ever got myself caught in a pickle again, it may not be a baseball game. It could be entirely something different. And that's the thing we have to remember, that I want everybody to remember. Never stop practicing the skill. One day it may pay off, but if anything else, you're a better person for keeping that skill at its highest level. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, David. This gets to me right, what I forgot in my introduction is to introduce him as my favorite football coach, as someone who I'm probably the only football coach of our qualified speakers. And I spent 25 years coaching volleyball and softball, so I have a respect for what he's been through. But an interesting story, and I never heard that about his only going to sports competition in high school, which is pretty special to go on to become coaching. Now, those of you who happen to be in clubs where there's somebody thinking about not returning and coming and continuing in Toastmasters, this comes my commercial, because all of our qualified speeches and all of our Speakers Bureau meetings are on YouTube, thanks to Rob. And you might just ask them to go and watch David give that speech, and maybe they'll change their mind about deciding to stop being active in your program. Okay, with that, I think we're going to let you guys out early too. It's something I always like to do, is to let my students out early if I can. So I don't know of anything else, but I saw that Dr. Valencia is here. Do you have anything to any announcements to make? I think I saw her there.
Greetings, yes, I'm here.
Yes.
And so is Melissa Stasko, our PQD. We're happy to be here tonight. And we just want you to know, on behalf of the trio, that we have contests that are coming up this week for divisions D and E. In addition to that, congratulations to those that are renewing their memberships. It's renewal time. We have several incentives, so please check the District 12 news. And thank you for spreading the word and getting all of your officers trained. We appreciate you. Thank you for renewing. And on behalf of Morris Anderson, our district director, Melissa Stasko, our program quality director, and myself, keep up the great work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Valencia. And if I'm sure she would appreciate any suggestions. If you have a potential new club and you'd like to help start that, there will be a team of people help you to do that. If you have a corporate site or whatever, that would be a good idea, or a specialty club that you have in mind. Let's get back to her and she will find people to help you get that started. Connie, do we have numbers that I can draw out here and so we can make sure people go away with something in their hands besides in their heads from their speeches tonight? Okay, just I need to pick out 5 if I'm not mistaken. That's 1, 2. How about that? Boy, I might pick out 5 numbers all in one time. So all right, look at your numbers and I will read them off in order. So it will be easy to know if you're all right. I think there's a well, this is too easy. All right, the numbers are 90, the last 3 numbers, 900, 902, 903, 904, and 905. Talk about if you're 901, you should really feel bad and discriminated against, most likely. I will trust you to make the, no, I believe you. Just go ahead and
See, I know Roger doesn't care about.
so 0, 2, 3, 4, and 5. One more?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
we collectively won.
All right, then we will just give me another number, whatever you. Should be 906.
899.
99. 899. You're 899. Rob comes up and he gets them. I think that's the one he wanted too, if I'm not mistaken. I think the big sports fanatic. Okay, all right, and we will see you April the 5th, and hopefully we'll have a few more people in the audience. We did have a reasonable showing, but certainly could use a lot more. Hopefully our qualified speakers will be there, and our next candidate for qualified speaker will be there. As I said, the announcement will come out within 24 hours. You will find out the results. So thank you all for coming, and stay out of the ice and snow if you can. Unless you live there, then you don't have a choice. Thanks for coming. Yes,
I'm looking to let you know that the votes are in your inbox.
the vote's in my inbox. Okay, we will have that result. And I said that will be immediately